what a glorious time to be in Vermont. It has changed so drastically. Spring is sprung for sure. We've gone from wearing hats and gloves and jackets to feeling like it's summer, and well, maybe even later today jumping in the river. I am with amelanchier, one of the sweetest little shrubs or small trees, also known as shad bush, or serviceberry. Amelanchier has many names. One of the first trees to flower, and amelanchier flowers and leaves at just about the same time. In fact, the flower cycle happens before the full leaf. They're often seen on the sides of the road like we are right now. So you can look for these little beautiful white flowers on trees. These flower clusters will turn into a deep purplish blue berry that is edible if you can find them before the birds do. Amelanchiers also there are numerous varieties, and some are cultivated and used in flower gardens and perennial gardens, but a really lovely tree, shrub, plant, kin. Also at my feet is horsetail, or Equestrium arvans. And horsetail, in the Carboniferous period, which was about 300 million years ago, before the time of the dinosaur, were the trees of the world. These were 20 to 30 feet tall back then. Horsetail now, hi Poppy, is used for its high silica content, but it really needs to be harvested in the first couple weeks of emergent from the ground. So these are probably a little bit past that. Horsetail's been up for about 4 to 6 weeks now. The silica content is really great for nails, for hair, but also for bones. So sometimes in herbal medicine, we talk about a doctrine of signature. And in horsetail, the doctrine of signature is that it looks jointed and thus is helpful for joint issues. We're walking in the Bristol Cliffs Wilderness today, which is in Lincoln. It's a beautiful place to come and explore. It is a true wilderness, so although from the parking area there is a little trail that you'll see, the trail after a short while really just peters out because the wilderness is for no set trail. A great place to really get out in the woods, work on developing a sense of place and orienting yourself to the surroundings. It's really helpful when you're in wilderness to note trees so that you have landmarks to know where you are in the woods. It's also important to explore these wild areas to find some of these things that you can establish your own relationships with the plants, with the land, with a sense of home and place, and come back to your own special spots time and time again. This is a new plant that we're meeting. This is false Solomon seal. I like to call her feathery Solomon seal. She has a neat flower that comes out the end. True Solomon seal have little flowers that come out at the joints underneath the leaves. True Solomon seal root has been used by some clinical herbalists to help with osteoporosis and other joint issues, but really common plants that you'll see in the woods. And also establishing themselves here on this little rocky outcrop are white pine. So white pine get to be really big trees if allowed to grow, but are really high in vitamin C. And if you pick the needles of white pine, they make a really lovely tea. I like to boil the needles, a good healthy clump of needles, in a few cups of water for about 15 minutes, and then you'll have a really high content of vitamin C tea that also has a really sweet taste. Here is a plant that we met a few weeks ago, false hellebore. False hellebore is poisonous and can be confused, especially when first emerging from the ground, for ramps or wild leeks. There have been a lot more reports of people this year being poisoned by false hellebore because they cook up hellebore for dinner or for lunch and think they're eating ramps and then get pretty sick. So be aware of what you're harvesting, where you're harvesting, and keep yourself well. This is Coptis groenlandica, or goldthread, or just Coptis, a really special evergreen woodland plant. This individual is flowering right now, which is really sweet and lovely. Coptis is really medicinal. So you can see in this bit where there's a little bit of exposed root, how gold that root is. And then they really are like gold threads, not too far under the surface of the soil. Coptis is really high in berberine. Berberine is a chemical constituent that is wonderful at fighting infections and has been shown to combat staph and strep, among other things. However, sustainable harvesting is a must with goldthread. This is a really small patch right here. On my property, I have a lot of goldthread. So when I harvest goldthread, say there's a big area of goldthread, I take a little bit from the center and then let it fill in over time, and I'm able to watch and make sure that the stand of goldthread is well established. Newly emerging wonder as a world plant is Indian cucumber root. Indian cucumber root is probably my favorite woodland treat, especially on a hot spring or summer or fall day. That said, Indian cucumber root, if over harvested, will decline quickly. So we really need to be mindful about how we harvest, where we harvest, and when we harvest. In this example, we came upon Indian cucumber root. This plant's really just coming up and is really well established here. I harvested a plant that was in the middle of the pack, we can say. This is a really young emergent. So when Indian cucumber root starts to flower, a second smaller whorl with just 3 leaves will come out on top of the main whorl, and then has these really beautiful flowers. I hope in the next few weeks we'll have some examples to show you. But I wanted to really emphasize the importance of taking what we need for sustenance, to connect with nature, but not being greedy, and really establishing the difference between need and greed. Humanity's track record in that is not great. We can see numerous examples in many aspects of life, but in the plant world, ginseng greatly overharvested, and there's very little stands of non-cultivated ginseng left. I worry about that with mushrooms like chaga, because chaga recently has been touted as a wonderful kind of whole body rejuvenator and protector. But because so many people all of a sudden are now thinking, oh, I need chaga, I worry that we're going to overharvest that. So cannot stress enough to differentiate in yourself the difference between need and greed. And I really hope that us as humans, that we can find that balance. So here is an Indian cucumber root that is sending up the second whorl, and we can see inside the beginnings of the flowers, which are really cool. The stamens of the flowers hang down and they're a light yellow. But Indian cucumber root individuals do not seed every year. So when harvesting Indian cucumber root, I tend to go for the individuals that are not sending up their second whorl, so that the ones that are seeding can go through their full reproductive cycle, so that they will continue to establish a large colony. Wood anemone, although when I first came upon this today, I used Newcombs to key this out. She's flowering beautifully, so it was really easy to do. A flower with 5 regular parts, whorled and divided leaves. And I also looked up wood anemone in the wildflowers of Vermont, and anemone cinquifolia, 5 petals, in the buttercup family, also known as windflower, because they're so delicate they tremble in the wind, as do many wildflowers. Native, this is flowering April to June, and habitat is moist woods. So Poppy's excited about this plant too. My most beloved Trillium friend is painted Trillium, a really lovely, delicate flower. The flowers tend to be a bit smaller than the wake robins, the red Trilliums, and the large white Trilliums, but then have this really outstanding color on the inside.